Hey guys, just wanted to make a quick video of what we talked about in class today. We added a little bit to the end of your notes, and so I want to make sure you virtual kids got this and added this to your notes, so it will be on the test. Now, speaking of the test, we're pretty much done with the material after today, and so I'll be reviewing in class tomorrow. Typically what we will do is, I think in class we'll probably do some Kahoot reviews. So what I will do is post the links of the Kahoots that we played in class online for you virtual kids, and so you can go in and check them out and maybe play them on your own and get a little bit of an idea of what's going to be on the test. So anyway, so I wanted to add a little bit. So last week we talked about this concept of a carrying capacity. Remember, the maximum number of individuals in a species that an environment can support for the long term, or just the number of the size of the population, the amount of resources that are available for that population to what it can support in that given area. It's kind of what we're thinking about. And Friday we did the little exercise on with the deer of the Kaibab, and this graph really does a good job of showing similar to that. That population of deer, remember, it went up, and the bell ringer today, I asked you what happens whenever a population exceeds the carrying capacity, overshoots the carrying capacity, and the answer that I was looking for was that the death rates will be greater than the birth rates. So if the death rates are greater than the birth rates, that population is going to decline and go down pretty rapidly in this sense, because there's not enough food for the individuals to eat, and a lot of them die. So it's kind of a sad scenario. Now, there can be other things that can affect carrying capacity. So we've been talking about energy availability, so food availability is there. Water is one. Now, typically around here, unless we're just undergoing a really extensive drought, water around here is typically not going to be contribute much to the carrying capacity of a population. More so, you'd find that in like a desert area. Desert areas, water would definitely availability could limit the number of individuals in a population. Oxygen, we kind of think about oxygen in that sense. I like to think of in a pond or something. If there's not a lot of oxygen available in that water, it could limit the life, the organisms that are found there. So that could definitely be a carrying capacity in an aquatic ecosystem. Nutrients available. If you think, I think of in this sense maybe like a field where there's not, the soil is really poor, that there wouldn't be a lot of nutrients available, which would limit the size of the population of plants or whatever that's found there. So you might think about the whole when we talked about the strip mining and that's done around here, and the soil that's left behind is so poor, it really limits the number and the quality of plant life that can be found in that area because of the lack of nutrients in the soil. The next couple terms I want to go over were just pretty simple, and they kind of speak for themselves. Immigration and immigration. Now, I know it's probably pronounced immigration and immigration, but I know my accent, I probably have a hard time, you probably have a hard time distinguishing between those two, the way I pronounce those. So I usually like to say immigration, so you know that the individuals are exiting a population. So typically organisms might immigrate whenever there's overpopulation or lack of resources, whether it's food or habitat or mates, things like that. So they might leave that population. Immigration, coming into, so that's an easy way to remember that, E exiting, I into a population. A lot of times it can be beneficial to a population. It can increase the gene pool, bring more genes into that, which would allow for more diversity among all the individuals. So those are a couple terms. I think those will be, there's a question that's going to use that terminology on the test. I wanted to make sure you're familiar with it. This last concept is called altruism. Altruism is a behavior of an animal that benefits another at its own expense. So there's a video that I'm going to, instead of playing it here, I'm going to put the link on Google, on the Google Classroom, so you can click on it. I would highly encourage you watching the video. It's only 2 or 3 minutes long, but it's really interesting. So altruism is this concept of organisms, there's a couple of ways to look at it. First of all, it can occur within the same species, where an individual might do something to protect or to increase the benefit of another individual at its own expense. Hopefully that makes sense to you. For example, maybe you have a population of monkeys, and there's some type of predator in the area, maybe a big cat, and one of the monkeys might make this loud call to warn all the others to run, to get away. And when it does that, when it makes that call, it's actually going to put itself in more of a dangerous situation, in that it's going to be able to be kind of focused in on and narrow, and the predator might be able to spot it and go kill it. So it actually puts itself at risk in order to benefit all the others in the population. Now, to me, that's more of maybe what some ecologists call kin selection. That tends to happen more often among individuals of the same species. And what we mean by kin, that's K-I-N selection, is that an individual, even though its own offspring may benefit, but it may not be benefited exactly. But if there's a close relative, maybe a sibling's offspring, or a sibling's, maybe one of its parents' siblings or something like that, might benefit from that response to that call that's making it aware. And the thought there is that if that individual, even though it might not be its own offspring benefiting, a close relative is going to have similar genes. Therefore, a lot of organisms, they want to pass their genes on to the next generation. So even though it might have similar genes, it's going to benefit from having those similar genes passed on. We see a lot of kin selection in a lot of social insects like bees, honeybees. Like, for example, worker bees, they defend the hive to the death if needed be. They spend a lot of time out foraging for nectar and pollen and bringing it back to the hive, yet they will never reproduce. The only ones that reproduce in that population are going to be the queen, and so they're going to help her. So, and that she's their mother, right? So she gave birth to them, so they're helping their mother, passing on her genes to future generations. And as she lays eggs and raises larvae, and so that's how this whole idea of kin selection is the betterment of the hive. It's kind of a form of altruism. The other type of altruism that the video is going to talk about is between two different species. And that one's a little harder to understand why it occurs. The video is going to give you a couple reasons, and I don't know, I'll let you see what you think about it, and see if you think maybe why they would do that. I know one particular one that I probably buy into more than anything is this concept that it's almost like early on in the year we talked about stimulus and response. If you're exposed to a certain stimulus, then your body will respond to that almost instinctively with some organisms. And I almost think it's that case if they're given this response, which is maybe a threat or something to their organisms around them, they respond, and just for the possibility that they would be protecting their own species, but in that response they may be actually protecting another species in doing so, and it's almost like an instinct. But that is something kind of why you can kind of see that happening. But typically altruism, you wouldn't think it would happen, because typically animals, it's a survival of the fittest, right? Natural selection. They want to, it's almost a selfishness. The video is going to talk about this selfish gene. Organisms want to pass their traits on to the next generation, and they're the ones and so it's not really beneficial for them to put themselves at risk for the betterment of another species, especially. So anyway, check out the video. I'll put the link on after this video, and you can watch it. It won't take long. So be looking tomorrow for the Kahoot reviews, and in the meantime, be studying this stuff, getting ready for the test. I'm thinking the test is going to be Wednesday. I'll let you know more about the time, work out a time with your virtual students to find out what time works best for you. Okay, thank you.